Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Theruvan Saranai. Good evening, Venerable Mahasangha, Sires and brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Today we will be starting on a new triplet, Atītārammaṇa Tika, past object triplet. We will first look at the three terms of the Atītārammaṇa Tika, past object triplet. Atītārammaṇā Dhammā, states that have the past as their object of thought. Anāgatārammaṇā Dhammā, states that have the future as their object of thought. Paccuppannārammaṇā Dhammā, states that have the present as their object of thought. We'll first look at the first term, Atītārammaṇā Dhammā, states that have the past as their object of thought. Now here, what this term means is that there are certain chitta and cetasika, certain consciousness and mental factors that take a past object as their object of thought. So basically what this term means is having a past object. And similarly with the other two terms, that is Anāgatārammaṇā Dhammā refers to having a future object as their object of thought. And Paccuppannārammaṇā Dhammā would be the chitta and cetasika that takes the present objects as their object of thought. Let's look at the Nikkepa Khandha, the summary section description of Atītārammaṇā Dhammā. Katame Dhammā Atītārammaṇā, which are the states that have the past as their object of thought. Atīte Dhamme Ārabba ye uppajjanti chitta cetasika Dhamma. Conscious states and their mental properties or their mental factors which arise in connection with the states that are past. Ime Dhamma Atītārammaṇā. These are the states that have the past as their object of thought. So what are the states that take a past object? So here in the Atthasālinī it is described that only limited, only paritta and sublime, mahāgata states are taken, you get only these two types of states that take Atītārammaṇā Dhammā. So now if we go back to the Paritta Tika, we learned three terms under Paritta Tika. Paritta Dhamma, Mahāgata Dhamma and Appamāna Dhamma. Paritta Dhamma or limited states refer to the kāmāvachara, the sense sphere states. The Mahāgata Dhamma, sublime states, refer to the fine material sphere, rūpāvachara, and the arūpāvachara, immaterial sphere states. And Appamāna Dhamma refers to the supramundane states. So here, why is it mentioned that only Paritta and Mahāgata states are taken? This is because the Appamāna states, those are the four Magga Chitta and the Cetasika, the four Phala Chitta and their Cetasika. These 8 Lokuttara or supramundane Dhammas take Nibbana as its object. Those 8 consciousness always takes Nibbana as its object of thought. So therefore, Nibbana, because Nibbana does not fall into any of these 3 categories of past, future or present. For that reason, Appamāna Dhamma, the Appamāna states are excluded from this triplet. So that is why under Atītārammaṇā Dhammā, it is mentioned that only Paritta and Mahāgata states are taken. We'll now look at the Atthakatha Khandha, the commentary chapter description of Atītārammaṇā Dhammā. Katame Dhamma Atītārammaṇā, which are the states that have the past as their object of thought. Viññānaṃ āyatanaṃ neva saññā nā saññāyatanaṃ states of the sphere of infinite consciousness, that is the viññāṇañcāyatana, and that of neither perception nor non-perception, neva saññā, na saññāyatana. Ime dhamma Atītārammaṇā. These are the states that have the past as their object of thought.
那现在我们再来看法集意识章里面对这个过去所缘法的定义。哪些法是过去所缘法呢？实无边处以及非想非非想处，那这一些法呢是属于过去所缘法。
So here, the viññāṇañcāyatana and the neva saññā na saññāyatana, these are arupavachara jhana chitta, and they always take a past object as their object of thought. And let's see what they are. Now, this we spoke about before under Mahāthera Dhamma, and the viññāṇañcāyatana chitta takes the ākāsānañcāyatana chitta as its sense object. And the neva saññā na saññā, that consciousness takes ākiñcaññāyatana chitta as its object of thought. So both these objects are Mahāggata Dhamma. They are arupavachara jhana chittas, and they are past chittas. So they are not there in the present moment. They are past attainments that these viññāṇañcāyatana, neva saññāyatana takes. So that is why these are classified under Atītārammaṇa Dhamma. And the other thing you must note is that these two chittas always take as their sense object the given chittas. Therefore, they are always past dhammas. They won't take any other dhammas as their sense object. We'll now look at the second term, Anāgatārammaṇa Dhamma, states that have the future as their object of thought. And this is the Nikkepa Khandha, the summary section description of it. Katame Dhamma Anāgatārammaṇa, which are the states that have the future as their object of thought. Anāgate Dhamme Ārabba Ye Uppajjanti Chitta Cetasika Dhamma. Conscious states and their mental factors which arise in connection with the states that are future. Ime Dhamma Anāgatārammaṇā. These are the states that have the future as their object of thought. And now let's look at the Atthakatha Khandam commentary chapter description. Niyoga Anāgatārammaṇā Natti. Now this is a very interesting statement. Strictly speaking, there are no risings of consciousness that take future objects. Now that's a very bold and very unusual statement, and we'll describe this next. Now, to remind you, now under Atītārammaṇa Dhamma, there were two chittas that we spoke about that always take a past object. But here, under Anāgatārammaṇa Dhamma, the commentary section is stating that, strictly speaking, there are no risings of consciousness that take future objects. So let's see why this is so. Now, one can argue, then what about the Anāgataṅsañāna? Anāgataṅsañāna is a fourth jhana chitta that always takes a future object as its sense object. And the Cetopariya where when it's looking into the future, it's taking a future object. So having these two chittas as Anāgatārammaṇa Dhamma, why is this phrase mentioned as strictly speaking, there are no risings of consciousness that take future objects? The reason is there isn't a designated or separate individual consciousness that always takes a future object. Because the Anāgataṅsañāna, and the Chetopariya jnana. These two chittas are basically Rupavachara, fourth jhana chittas. And if you take the Rupavachara, fourth jhana chitta, their objects are quite diverse. For instance, when a person is doing a kasina meditation, a kasina bhavana, the sense object is a panyakti, is a concept. It could be patavi, tejo, and so on. So then the object is a concept. If it's upekha bhavana, the sense object is an appamanya. And if it's dibba chakku, dibba sota, it's a present object. If it's pubbe nivasanussati jnana, it's a past object. And if it's anāgatārammaṇa, it's a future object. So likewise, the objects are very diverse. They may be past, present, future. They may be concepts. So for that reason, because there isn't a separate individual consciousness, a designated consciousness that we can say, okay, this one is, this particular consciousness always takes a future object. Because we can't name such a consciousness, that is why this phrase is given here. We'll now look at the third term, Paccuppannārammaṇa dhammā, states that have the present as their object of thought. The Nikkepa Khandam description. Katame dhammā Paccuppannārammaṇa, which are the states that have the present as their object of thought. Paccuppanne dhamme arabba ye uppajjanti chitta cetasika dhamma. Conscious states and their mental factors which arise in connection with the states that are present. Ime dhamma Paccuppannārammaṇa. These are the states that have the present as their object of thought. Now, to understand this, let's refresh our minds. Let's look at a cognitive process. Now, here we have given the I-do process. And when it comes to the I-do, the five sense doors, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, these five doors always take a present object as their sense object. So, because basically, if you're looking at something, what you're seeing is something that is existing at this present moment. The visible object has to be a present object. You can't see something from the past or from the future when it comes to the five sense doors. So what you see, what you hear, what you smell, taste, feel are all present objects. So that position is given in this cognitive process under number 5. So here, because we are looking at an I-do process, what we get here is the I consciousness at number 5, the chakku viññāna. Now, if it was a sound, then it would be sota viññāna. A smell, it would be gana viññāna. Taste, it would be jivha viññāna, and kaya viññāna if it's touch. So depending on which sense door that is stimulated, then the cognitive process would differ depending on which door we are talking about. So altogether at number 5, we are able to get 10 different consciousness. Those are the chakku, sota, gana, viññāna, and kaya chittas, viññānas. So these 10 always take a present object as its object of thought. Next, we'll look at the 2 highlighted ones. 4 and 6 are highlighted in green. Now, what are they? Number 4 is 5-door adverting, the panchadvara vajjana. And number 6 is the receiving consciousness, sampatichana. So there are 2 sampatichana and there's 1 panchadvara vajjana. These 3 consciousness together collectively are called mano dhātu. The mano dhātu always arises in context of the 5 sense door processors. So you will get the mano dhātu arising only with the chakku, sota, gana, jibha, kaya, chitta, viti. So you won't get them, you won't find them in other chitta, viti. So they have to be one of these panchadvarika chitta, viti. So these again always take a present object as its object of thought. Then afterwards, we see the Vottapana Chitta, the Santirna Chitta, Vottapana, Javana, Atītārammaṇa. They may take other objects as their object of thought. So that we will talk about later. But here what I want to highlight, numbers 4, 5 and 6. These chittas always take a present object as their object of thought. Now let's look at the Atthakatha description. Katame Dhamma Paccuppannārammaṇā, which are the states that have the present as their object. Dve pancha viññānāni tissocha mano dhātuyo. 2 sets of 5 consciousness and 3 mind elements. Ime Dhamma Paccuppannārammaṇā. These are the states that have the present as their object. So, the 2 sets of 5 consciousness, the Dvi Pancha Viññānāni. What are they? These are what we mentioned before. The Chakku, Sota, Gana, Jibha, Kaya, Viññāna. And here we get 2 sets of 5 consciousness. That is, because each of these, if you take the eye consciousness, we get an ahetuka kusala vipaka as well as a akusala vipaka chitta. Similarly, with the ear, nose and tongue body, we get ahetuka kusala as well as akusala vipaka chitta arising as these relevant consciousness. So altogether we get 10 consciousness, and they always take a present object as their object of thought. The 3 mind elements, the tisso, mano, dhātuyo. Now here what is referred to are the 2 sampatichana and the panchadvara vajjana. So what we mentioned before when we are looking at the chitta viti, the cognitive process, the chittas that are on either side of the chakku viññāna, chitta. So the panchadvara vajjana was in front of it, and afterwards was the sampatichana. So these 3 also always arise in connection with the present object. Now there are more chitta described under the commentary chapter, the Atthakatha khandha. Now let's look at them. Kāmāvaccara kusalassa vipākato dasa chittuppada. The 10 sense sphere wholesome resultant risings of consciousness. Akusalassa vipākato mano dhātu upekkhā sahagata. Unwholesome resultant mind consciousness element accompanied by equanimity. Kiriya hetuka mano viññāna dhātu somanassa sahagata. Rootless, functional mind consciousness element accompanied by joy. Ime Dhamma siya Atītārammaṇa, siya Anāgatārammaṇa, siya Paccuppannārammaṇā. These states can be stated as having a past object, having a future object, or having a present object. Now here we have grouped a few chittas separately because they can take either a past, future, or present object. And we will be looking at the separate instances when these occur later on. But first we will look at what these individual chittas are. Right, so first let's look at the Kāmāvaccara kusalassa vipākato dasa. What are the 10 sense sphere wholesome resultant risings of consciousness? These are the 8 Kāmāvaccara kusala vipāka, also called Mahavipaka, and the two ahetuka kusala vipaka, santirana chitta. Then the akusalasa vipakato manoviññāna dhātu upekka sahagata. The unwholesome resultant mind consciousness element accompanied by equanimity. This refers to the akusala vipaka santirana chitta. And the kiriya hetuka manoviññāna dhātu somanasa sahagata. This is the rootless functional mind consciousness element accompanied by joy. That is the hasituppada chitta. Now we mentioned that these consciousness can take the past, future or present as its sense object. Now we already spoke about the present object. So let's take the Ido process. If you take the Ido process, it's a present object, and there the Santirana chitta, that was the chitta that came right after the Sampatichana chitta. That can take a present, that takes a present object at that particular moment. And again, the Santirana also can occur as the Atītārammaṇa chitta. Then again, the 8 Kāmāvachara Kusala Vipāka chitta also can arise as Atītārammaṇa chitta in this same Ido process. So there, it's taking a present object as its object of thought. Now, then when does it take a past object? So if you think of the Maranasanna or the death cognitive process, so nearing death, the last chitta viti that occurs, during that stage, the last stage arises, you get the Chuti chitta, and then subsequently the next life, you get the Patisandhi chitta. So this Patisandhi chitta, the first chitta of the next life, can take 3 objects as its sense object: Kamma, Kamma nimitta, and Gati nimitta. So we have 3 objects that can arise, that this Patisandhi chitta can take. So if the Patisandhi chitta has taken the Kamma, so in other words, during the last stages of that person's life, the Maranasanna Chitta Viti, if it was a Kamma that came forward, a past Kamma, then the Arammana will be a past object. So for example, this particular individual, he remembers a huge meritorious deed that he had done in his life. So then he recalls a past Kamma, and subsequently his Patisandhi chitta will also take that Kamma as the sense object. So it's a past object. A Kamma nimitta is also similar. Again, it is something of the past. So what is a Kamma nimitta? Now let's say a person murders somebody and he used a weapon, he used a knife to stab this person. So there, the Kamma was performed using that knife. So that is a Kamma nimitta. So towards the end, he remembers this, and subsequently the Patisandhi chitta of the next life takes that Kamma nimitta as its Arammana. Then again, it is a past object. Then when does it take a future object? That is when Gati nimitta comes. Now, Gati nimitta would be, Gati nimitta would be present, because Patisandhi, now towards the end of life, a person may start seeing maybe dark red fire, things like that. So they may start seeing things corresponding to their next life. Some people may see flowers, some things, very pleasant things that are heavenly things. So things in relation to his next realm. That would be Gati nimitta. So the Patisandhi chitta then will be taking a present object, because by the time the Patisandhi chitta arises, that would be his new life. That is the new Gati. So the gati nimitta would be a present object. And then the akusala vipaka santirana again is similar. There again it can take a present object, like in the Ido process. It can take a past object, like we mentioned, and they can also take future objects. Then what about the Hasituppada? The Hasituppada is a chitta that arises to arahants. So lay putujjana people, lay people do not get this consciousness. So Hasituppada chitta also can take the past, the present, or something in the future as its sense object. Now, the Hasituppada is, again, there's another special thing about Hasituppada. It always takes a paritta dhamma as its sense object. It's always a Atītārammaṇa dhamma. So it takes only kamavachara dhamma as its sense object. So there's another special difference with this Hasituppada chitta. Right, so the comment chapter gives another phrase here. Kamavachara kusalam, akusalam, kiryato nava chittupada. Sense sphere wholesome, unwholesome, 9 functional risings of consciousness. Rupavacharan chatuttam jhana kusalatocha kiryatocha. Fine material sphere, 4th jhana, wholesome and functionals. Ime dhamma siya Atītārammaṇā, siya Anāgatārammaṇā, siya Paccuppannārammaṇā, siya navatabba Atītārammaṇā tipi, Anāgatārammaṇā tipi, Paccuppannārammaṇā tipi. These states can be having past objects, having future objects, having present objects, cannot be stated as having past, future, or present objects. Now, what does this mean? When it comes to Paccuppannārammaṇā, when it comes to navatabba, siya navatabba, that part where it states that cannot be stated as having past, future, or present objects, it's referring to something that is not past, future, or present. Now, what are those objects? These are the paññatti, concepts, and nibbana. So some of these dhamma, some of these chitta cetasika take concepts, paññatti, and nibbana as its sense object. That is why that final statement is also given here. Now, we will describe this further in the next slide after we look at these individual chittas. So the kamavachara kusalang are the 8 sense sphere wholesome chittas, the 8 mahakusala. And the akusalang are the 12 unwholesome chittas. Kiryato navachittupada. What are the 9 functional risings of consciousness? These are the 8 mahakriya, or the 8 sense sphere functional consciousness, and the manodvara vajjana chitta, the mind-do adverting consciousness. And then the rupavachara chatutta jhana, the fine material 4th jhana, but here we are looking at only the kusal and kriya, the wholesome and functionals. Now let's just try to understand it using a few examples. Now here, these groups of consciousness can take a past, future, or present object. And at the same time, it can take an object that is not termed as past, present, or future. Those are the concepts, the paññatti and nibbana. Now, the kamavachara kusala, we'll take the kamavachara kusala. So when the kamavachara kusala is arising in context of a present object, let's say somebody is giving offering a dana, offering something to a monk. Then there is an object. If the mind is focused on that particular object at that moment, then it is a Paccuppannā, it is a present object. And then if he generates a kusala chitta in relation to that present object, then it will be a Paccuppannārammaṇā. If someone recalls a past karma, a past good deed that he did, and he generates a kāmāvachara kusala at this moment, then that chitta is taking a past object as its sense object. Likewise, if someone starts thinking of something in the future, so for example, you're planning a huge almsgiving, a big almsgiving, and you're thinking about it today, you're doing it in the future, and let's say you're thinking of that, then you're generating kusal now at this present moment, thinking of something that you're going to do in the future. So then your object of thought is something in the future. So likewise, it is the same for akusal. It can be past, present, or future. Then what are the concepts that these chittas can take? Now let's say I am thinking of a certain individual and I am generating a lot of anger towards that person. So who are individuals? Individuals are paññatti, they are concepts. So then the object of thought would be a concept at that particular moment, and it would be, I would be generating, if I'm generating anger at that particular moment, it would be a dosa sahagata, it would be a consciousness rooted in hatred. So likewise, let's say, when would a kusala chitta take nibbana as its sense object? Now, we spoke about an instance where the Sotapatti, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arihant, they recollect on five different things. They recollect on the Magga, Phala, Nibbana, the akusala that they have eliminated, and the remaining akusala when it comes to the Sotapatti, Sakadagami, and Anagami individuals. The Arahants don't have anything remaining, so they won't be thinking of that. So this recollection or paccavekkhana is one instance where the kāmāvachara mahakusala, in particular, these are the jnana sampayutta mahakusala. They can take nibbana as their sense object. So paccavekkhana is one instance where the navattabbārammana, what we mentioned here as navattabbārammana, the nibbana is taken. Then when it comes to the kiriyato nava, again kriya chitta. If you take the 4 jnana sampayutta mahakriya, again during paccavekkhana, it can take nibbana as its sense object. And manodvaravajjana. Now it's very easy to understand manodvaravajjana because that is the starting consciousness of all the mind or processes. So manodvaravajjana can take absolutely anything as its sense object, whether it's past, present, future, whether it's a concept, nibbana, anything, absolutely anything can be taken as a sense object by manodvaravajjana. So it's self-explanatory. And then the rūpāvachara chatuttan jhana kusalatocha kiriyatocha. So these jhana, here we are talking about only the 4th jhana. Now, the 4th jhana can take paññatti. When does it take paññatti? When the 4th jhana is when the object is a kasina, it is a paññatti. When if it's upekka, that is the object of thought, then again it is a paññatti. If it's a dibba chakku, dibba sota, it will be something in the present. If it's, let's say, Pubbe nivasanussati jnana, then it's something in the past. If it's Anāgatārammaṇā, it's something in the future. So likewise, the fourth jhana is able to take the past, the future, the present. So when does it take something in the present? If it's Cetopariya, it can take something in the present as its sense object. So the fourth jhana can take the past, future, present, as well as those that do not pertain to past, present, or future. The paññatti can be taken as their sense objects. The Atthakatha has a further paragraph. Rūpāvachara tika chatukka jhana kusalatocha vipakatocha kiryatocha. The 3 or 4 wholesome resultant and functional jhana of the fine material sphere. Now, what does this Rūpāvachara tika chatukka jhana mean? Now, we learned that there are 2 jhana systems, the 4 jhana system and the 5 jhana system. So according to the 4 jhana system, now there are 5 jhana factors, vitakka, vichara, pīti, sukha, ekaggata. So depending on which factors are arising together with the consciousness, we name these jhanas. So according to this the 4 and 5 jhana systems, the first 3 jhanas of the 4 jhana system and the first 4 jhanas of the 5 jhana system are considered here. And all 3 types of jhana, the kusala, wholesome, vipaka, the resultant, and kriya, functional, all of these are considered here. Next, chatuttassa jhanassa vipako, the 4th jhana resultants. Now here we are talking only about the vipaka of the 4th jhana. And what is meant by 4th jhana is the 4th jhana of the 4 jhana system, not the 5 jhana system. So this is the highest Rūpāvachara jhana resultants that we are talking about here. Ākāsānaṁ āyatana, the base of infinite space. Ākiñcaññāyatana, base of nothingness. Cattaro magga apariyapanna cattaricha samanya phalani, the 4 paths which are unincluded and the 4 fruits of the life of a recluse. So these are the 4 magga and the 4 phala chitta that they are talking about. Ime dhamma navattabba Atītārammaṇā tipi, Anāgatārammaṇā tipi, Paccuppannārammaṇā tipi. These states cannot be stated as having past, future, or present objects. Now let's look at these. So when we take the Rūpāvachara, Tika, Chatukka jhana, Kusala, Vipaka, and Kriya, here we are talking about the Rūpāvachara, 1st, 2nd, 3rd jhanas of the 4 jhana system and the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th jhanas of the 5 jhana system. So what are the objects that they take? They always take concepts, paññatti, as their sense object. The kasinas and then the appamanyas, all of these don't pertain to Atīta, Anāgata, or Paccuppannārammaṇā. They don't have a past, future, or present. These are concepts. So that is why they are taken here. Then what about the 4th jhana? The 4th jhana, we took the kusala and kriya under the previous category. We described that. But what about the vipaka? Now the vipaka always arises as patisandhi, bhavanga, and chuti. the Chatuttassa, the fourth jhana resultants always occur as Patisandhi, Bhavanga, or Chuti. So these are always always take a concept as its sense object. Therefore, again, it falls under this category. And similarly, the Atthasālinī here, they don't mention they don't mention it as Kusala Vipaka or Kriya. But all three of these are included within this word Atthasālinī. And similarly, Akiņcaññāyatana, they are also the Kusala Vipaka Kriya, all three consciousness are included here. So both these consciousness are immaterial sphere, arupavachara jhana, and they again take concepts, paññāti, as their sense object. Then what about the four magga and the four phala? So as I mentioned before, the 8 supramundane, the 8 lokuttara citta always take nibbana as its sense object. So therefore, this group of consciousness cannot be called Atītārammaṇa, Anāgatārammaṇā, or Paccuppannārammaṇā, because they take either concepts or nibbana as their sense object. Then lastly, it's given Rupancha, Nibbanancha, Anārammana. Materiality and final state of deliverance are without sense objects. So, what are the dhammas that take sense objects? Or what are the dhammas that have an object of thought? Only chitta and cetasika, only consciousness and mental factors can take sense objects. Rupa, the 28 matter, can be a sense object, but they cannot take a sense object. Nibbana similarly can be an arammana, but it will not take a sense object as its object of thought, because they are not related to the consciousness and mental factors. Only consciousness and mental factors take sense objects. That is why Rupa, the 28 Rupa and Nibbana are called Anārammana, and they are excluded from this Tika. So we will be talking further about the description given in the Atthakatha Khandha with the commentaries during our next lesson. So if you feel that it's still not very clear, don't worry, we'll be talking about that last couple of slides during our next lesson. And it would also be helpful if you go back and revise on the Paritta Tika, the Atītārammaṇa Tika, as well as the Atīta Tika. They'll be helpful to grasp the content of the Atītārammaṇa Tika in a better way. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask them now. Okay, let me ask you a question. If you take the Appamānārammaṇā Dhamma, what kind of objects do the Appamānārammaṇā Dhamma take? Is it a past, future, or present object? Or is it something that cannot be stated as past, present, or future? Good, we already have an answer. So Feni says cannot be stated as past, present, or future. Yes. So what are Appamānārammaṇā Dhamma? Appamānārammaṇā Dhamma refer to the 4 magga and the 4 phala and the 36 mental factors. So these dhammas are lokuttara dhamma. They always take nibbana as their object of thought. So nibbana is not something that pertains in the past, future, or present. So it cannot be stated as past, future, or present. Yes. Okay, I'll ask one more question. What about Mahāgatarammaṇa Dhamma? What are Mahāgatarammaṇa Dhamma? What kind of objects do they take? Is it a past, future, or present object? Or can we say that it cannot be stated as past, present, or future? Okay, now the question I asked was Mahāgata-rammana Dhamma, not Mahāgata Dhamma. So I can see some of the answers are referring to Mahāgata Dhamma. But the question is regarding Mahāgata-rammana Dhamma, what kind of objects do they take? Good. So we have got the correct answer. Mahāgata-rammana Dhamma takes a past object. Now, how does that happen? So first we'll look at what Mahāgata-rammana Dhamma are. Mahāgata-rammana Dhamma means Chitta Chetasika Dhamma that take Mahāgata Dhamma, sublime objects, as their sense object. So what are these Chitta Chetasika Dhamma? These are the Arupavachara Jhana, the Vijñānañca-āyatana, and the Neva Sanya, Āyatana. So these jhanas, these are Arupavachara Jhana, they take Mahāgata Dhamma. They take sublime consciousness as their sense object. And these are past dhammas from the past. So they always take Atītārammaṇa as their sense object. Therefore, the answer to that question would be past. But if I change the question to Mahāgata Dhamma, what kind of objects do Mahāgata Dhamma take? Then the answer will be entirely different. Then it can be past, future, or present. It could also be paññatti. So then the answer will be quite diverse.
No. Doctor, just to clarify, Doctor is talking about the Ekanta Mahāgata-rammana, right? Because it can be Anikanta, then can also take other objects.
Yes. So if you take the Anekanta, then you will get the Manodvara Vachana, and also you can get the Abhiññā Chitta. But the question what I meant was actually the Ekanta Mahāgata-rammana. That's correct. So another useful exercise and an interesting exercise would be to compare the Paritārammaṇa Dhamma with the Paritārammaṇa Tika with the Atītārammaṇa Tika, and see which dhammas fall into which categories. So you can compare the two tikas, and that is also a good exercise to make you understand this Matika better. You can forward any questions that you have to this email address dhamma.acharini@gmail.com. Our next lesson will be on the 17th of August. It's now time to share merits. I would like all of you to join me.
那现在呢，我们将我们所做的这种种功德呢做分享，请大家呢跟着老师一起做这个功德的分享。
Ākāsattā ca Bhummattā Devānāgā Mahittika Puññānthaṃ Anumoditva Chiran Rakkantu Sāsanam Chiran Rakkantu Desanam Chiran Rakkantu Mamparaṃ Idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu Sukhitā hontu ñātayo Idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu Sukhitā hontu ñātayo Idam me ñātīnaṃ hotu Sukhitā hontu ñātayo Imina punya kammena Mame bala samagamu
Sata samagamu hotu
Yava
Yawa
nibbana
nibbana patiya
Idam me punyang
Yamme punyam
Asavakkaya vaham hotu
Kaya wahang hotu
Idam me punyang
Yamme punyam
Nibbanassa paccayo hotu
Nibbana sapacayo hotu
Mama punya bhagang
Mama punya bagang
Sabba sattānaṁ bhājemi.
Sabbasatanam bhajemi.
Te sabbe me samā.
Te sabbe me samam.
Punya bhagaṁ labantu.
Punya bhagang labantu.
Buddha sāsanaṁ chirantiktatu.
Buddha sasanam cirang titatu.
Buddha sāsanaṁ chirantiktatu.
Buddha sasanam cirang titatu.
Buddha sāsanaṁ chirantiktatu.
Buddha sasanam cirang titatu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Sadhu,
Thank
sadhu,
you very
sadhu.
much,
Good night.
Doctor. Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu,
sadhu.